Welcome to Uncomfortable, conversations about culture and Christianity. My name is Eric, and today I'm joined by Rachel.
Hey, y'all.
And Mackenzie.
Hello.
And Alex.
Go Chiefs.
Go Chiefs.
Woo, yeah.
Not 49ers.
No.
I it is going to be at least some different teams this year. So either way you look at it, it's
been like
interesting.
50 years or something since the Chiefs have
been
to the Super Bowl. Yeah.
Wow.
Not quite that for the Niners, but...
No, but
we talked about football enough last week.
Yeah, sorry about that. Go check out that lovely interview we had with Danny Woodhead. Today we're talking about something different, which is social media addiction.
Yeah.
It's time you face it. You're addicted to social media. This is something that we're just, none of us claim to be social media addiction experts.
Yeah.
But, we've done a little research and we kind of want to walk through this. What does it look like? What are maybe some signs? What does addiction really mean? And maybe there's some things that we can talk about that'll help, some pointers, things like that. So Alex, why don't you start us off? Explain to us, just because the word addiction, it gets thrown around very lightly. It gets used for all sorts of things that it probably doesn't actually pertain to. Like, what's a good way to define it?
Yeah, so I wanted to have some actual definition that's people use. And so checked out the American Society of Addiction Medicine and their definition of what addiction is, because like you said, people do throw it around. And here is how they define it. Addiction is a treatable chronic medical disease involving complex interactions among brain circuits, genetics, the environment, and an individual's life experiences. People with addiction use substances or engage in behaviors that become compulsive and often continue despite harmful consequences. Prevention efforts and treatment approaches for addiction are generally as successful as those for other chronic diseases. And so that feels like a very medical, smarter people than at least me wrote it kind of stuff. But I think it is helpful in understanding what addiction is, where there's lines and oh, I'm so addicted to Starbucks, and people can be, but we kind of throw that word around. Like, I'm addicted to everything.
Addicted to Netflix.
Yeah.
I could just go on, but I'll stop there.
Thanks.
There's a lot of things, though. You do hear that a lot. I think it's one of those things where the more you use a word, it kind of loses its value.
Yeah.
I think love, that's a word. I love this, I love that, I love you, let's make love, let's do that. Like, it just starts to lose its value. So addiction is another one of those words where I feel like people use it, at least in my Twitter feed, everybody's addicted to everything all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, sometimes people paint addiction like, oh, I'm so addicted to this, like it's a good thing.
Right.
But we're probably talking about it more in okay, social media, when does it become an unhealthy thing in your life? I would say for me personally, addiction or just unhealthy. A couple of years ago, I gave up social media for a year, and I wouldn't say I was addicted to social media before that, but about 2 weeks in, I realized how much negativity had been in my life through social media, and I just felt so much better. And I would say that was a really healthy thing that I did to give that up. I didn't have it for about a year and a half, and it was seriously awesome.
Yeah. And I think it's different. Social media can be so different from being addicted to alcohol. That's a more visible, obvious thing that you're addicted to, and not everyone's addicted to alcohol, but everyone's on social media, everyone's always scrolling or posting pictures or posting status updates or whatever, and so it's a less obvious kind of oh, I might actually be addicted to this, awareness that you might not actually have because everybody's on social media almost.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think the research is still out, so alcohol, things that have been around for a long time. We're living in the middle of, there's a guy that does a lot of social media research we're living in what he says is the biggest communication change in the last 500 years with the advent of technology and social media and how that's affecting us. And we have no clue. Like, so many people are using it. It's kind of like e-cigarettes. Everybody jumped on those and everyone's like, no one really knows what they're putting in their body. Let's just do it because it makes us feel good and all that kind of stuff. And then as research comes out and we find out it's more dangerous or there's toxins and all that kind of stuff,
people start developing cauliflower lung.
Yeah. And then you start to regulate it more. And so I think that's one reason that this is fascinating to talk about. Also, like, someone wanted us to talk about this, and so we put out more. Yeah, we put out wanted feedback, and so we take people's feedback seriously, and so someone was interested. So hopefully we're hitting the mark at some way in what you wanted to talk about. And I think it's interesting because our church is in the middle of a detox series, so we're talking about fasting, and one of those elements people have been fasting from, and maybe kind of like you alluded to, Mackenzie, when people realize I need to separate from something, and then you don't actually realize maybe how it's affecting your life until after. So I've had conversations with people in my small groups and things like that are kind of realizing how big of a hold maybe this has on their life, including myself. And so we can get into that later as well. But
That's good.
All right. Well, where do we want to start?
Where do we want to start?
Where do we think the core of the problem is? Can we address it? Do you think because I think the thing that circles it is it affects everyone so differently. Like if you're, if you're a teenager and you're kind of in these developmental stages, or maybe you're, somewhere, maybe you're middle-aged and you just use it kind of to like almost feel jealous all the time because you're basing your life on everyone else's life, or maybe you're an empty nester and you use it to try to connect to family that isn't around anymore. It takes its place. It takes place in different areas of your life. Like you just you don't know where it has a grip on you, where it's healthy, where it's unhealthy. Let's talk a little bit about the negative side of it first. Like what are some of those things that we can identify, like where social media has definitely been bad, like it has hurt people, etc.
Yeah, I think. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I kind of alluded for it earlier. I felt like it brought a lot of negativity to my life, and so when I say that, I mean, obviously there's a lot of negativity that's on Facebook, but not all of it's negative. Like you get on there, you see, oh, my friend got engaged, my other friend had a baby. Like it's a great way, right, that we say, oh, we can keep up with other people. For me in my life, I think just having other people's life in my face all the time made it really hard for me to just live in the moment and just be present in my own life. And so I think we've talked about a little bit just how people on social media tend to put the best parts of their life. They put the highlights. And so when you're seeing the highlights of everybody else's life and you are like at home on the couch thinking, wow, my life is so boring compared to all these other people, it can be a really difficult thing. So...
Yeah, and then also from the other side of it, like it affects how you are presenting yourself as well. Like I found like there's so many times when I just was like eating a meal or like doing something that was really fun, or like hang out and be like, oh, I got to share this. Like immediately like pull my phone out. Oh, I need to share this and make sure everybody knows that I'm having this fun time or I'm eating this awesome meal. And I just realized I was like, man, I'm not actually ever just enjoying a moment just for me, like, and just with who I'm with. I feel like I have to share every moment with the people around me, and so it's like that constant like nagging, like I'm gonna get my phone out and share this with people instead of just being there.
That's good.
It is. I think for me, one of the negatives is you start to look for approval in on social media, or at least I have. As one of the practices I've had to learn is even after I preach, it's cool because they'll put like a sermon, clip out there and things like that. And then people will start to give feedback, and there's approval or disapproval, or at least I take it as approval or disapproval by how many people like, my sermon clip, or how people comment.
And if they heart it, they really like it.
If they heart it, then that's like +2, and then I add it all up. And no, but seriously, like I've had to learn that I just need to, like, for 3 days, log off of Facebook after I preach, because all of my worth and all of like how my litmus test for how well God worked through me or how good that message was can easily get caught up in those stats, the statistics, and then I start to feel bad about myself, or I feel really good about myself, both ways, based on how people are responding. And which is basically up to algorithms and all those kind of things, and how people see it. And so for me, it's done unhealthy things for me to think I'm really bad at life because of how people are not responding, especially when you compare it to others, or that think I'm better at life than I actually am because people are responding, giving me more likes than they gave to the person the week before. And so I've had to really try to protect my heart and how I value and see my identity because of that.
Well, I think that's one of the dangers is when likes become your value, like when that's your currency for how valuable you are as a human and your contribution to the world. And you see that, I think, a lot of times with, like, I mean, I'll look at my own Instagram account and I might have 10 likes, and that's a pretty good day.
Yeah.
It's a good post. But then I'll like see some high schooler with like 1,400 likes, and I'll be like, what did I do wrong in life? Like, where have I gone astray? Like, I don't have any friends. But it's so easy to kind of fall into that trap. I think it's just one of those things where, or you can post something that you're really proud of too, and then you'll just go like, wow, I thought, like, to me this had a lot of worth. Yeah. But maybe it doesn't, because nobody seems to care.
Yeah.
Another thing, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Another thing that I think social media does is it gives us this false sense of a relationship with other people. So I have friends all over the country that I went to college with, that I grew up with, and seeing their posts gives me this idea of that I'm maintaining these relationships. Oh, I saw they had a baby. Oh, I saw they got married. I saw they moved. Versus me actually picking up the phone and calling them and saying, like, how are you doing? And actually hearing how they're doing. I feel like we're still friends and I'm still up to date on their life because I've seen their highlights. And so I just think, like, so for example, when I was off social media for a year and a half, my friend had a baby and she's in Arizona, and I was like, hey, let me know when you have a baby. Like, I'm not on social media.
Yeah.
Well, what do you know? Life gets crazy. She has a baby, posts it online. She tells everybody basically by doing that, I had a baby. Totally forgets to let me know. And I'm not on social media. So I felt very hurt about that in the moment. But, like, in my mind, I'm making an effort to, like, maintain this relationship from states away. Yeah. And when we just post an update, it's like, oh yeah, I thought you would have seen it. And so I think that, like, our idea of community kind of changes online. In some ways, in a very positive way, but in some ways, I think it can be negative.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting with that example specifically because you're kind of going against the norm. So in some ways, like, I mean, not to blame you, but it's your own fault that you didn't know, right? Because it's like, so you're putting this pressure on your friend
now, right?
To be like, what, am I going to put a stamp on this and, like, send it to you? Like, I had a baby. Like, what do you want? Like, just be on Facebook and see like everyone else. You know, I think that's kind of, as a society, everybody's just accepted that now. Like, oh, you don't know what's going on in my life? Well, I mean, you should. I posted about it.
Right? But if I haven't talked to you in years, but I saw all your posts and put a heart on them, like, is that a real relationship?
It's very personable.
It's very strange to me.
But I think it does, to like a counterpoint, it's been great for me in some ways to see what's going on in someone's life, especially when I was like working with students or like working with people at the church that I don't have like a lot of face-to-face relationship with, or they feel like they really know me maybe because I'm on stage, or they've heard us on this podcast and they come up to you and they start having these conversations. And then when I become friends with them on social media, I feel like I have an inroad into their life as well. And so, you know, somebody will post a prayer request like in our church's Facebook group, and, you know, instead of that superficial, hey, how you doing? Good morning. Oh, I'm good. You know, and then you kind of pass them by. Now I have a conversation, a piece to dialogue around. Like, man, how is your grandma doing? Like, I saw you put that on there. They assume that they put it and multiple people are seeing it. And so all of a sudden I have a dialogue starter, especially with students when I would follow them. You know, like that was the typical answer is like, hey, buddy, how's your week going? Good. Anything cool happen in your week? No. Doing anything fun at school? No. Like that was like, that's all that I would hear from students. But then if I would enter a conversation like, dude, you scored 36 points in your basketball game this week. That was so awesome. All of a sudden we have this dialogue and they feel like there's been some interaction. So whether that's healthy or not, I've seen it play out in other ways, you know, too, that's benefited me in those face-to-face interactions because of the networking part of the social landscape, I guess, as well. So
yeah, and I think that proves that like social media is a neutral thing. It just is what we do with it that can determine whether it's a positive or negative impact on our lives. And I think one thing that really hit me one time was I was spending, I don't know, you can check on your phone and see how much time you spend on an app, and it's just like kind of like, oh my goodness, that's way too much time. But I mean, I was spending probably an hour on Instagram every day. And one time I was scrolling through and my husband was like, oh, who's that? Because there was like a person with a baby. I was like, I don't know. And then I scrolled to another picture. He's like, well, who's that? And I was like, I don't know. And I scrolled to the next one. I don't know that person either. And I was like realizing, oh my goodness, I am following all these people, spending this time every single day, investing my, energy and time at looking at their lives. And I don't even know them and I will never interact with them, but I just liked their page. I just liked what they were posting. And so that was kind of a wake up call for me. Like, okay, who am I following? How is that impacting me? And sometimes it's even as easy as like going through your people you're following and unfollowing people that it's like, do you really have a relationship with them? Do you actually, and that limits, how long you spend on your phone every day. That's more of a practical thing that I had to take a step towards. But
can we talk about that for a second? What Apple's done? I don't know if you're an Android user. The rest of us are Apple. the whole screen time thing that they've done.
Yeah.
It's like they magically have done this just to make Christians feel guilty. Because every Sunday morning, literally, I'm like in church or it's like a 10 something every Sunday morning when I get it. I don't know if you can change it, but and I'm like sitting there, I get the ding, I'm like, oh wow.
Oh, you're the alert to look at your screen time.
I'm so guilty. I'm down 36% this week, or I'm up 14% this week, and it's like always on Sunday morning. So I don't know if anybody else like that weight on their conscience happens, but
it's intentional
for me,
I'm
for sure.
Yeah. Okay, so there are a lot of negatives, and before we get further into like the addiction side of it, like let's try to play both sides of this. What are some of the positives that we see from social media? What are the helpful things? Where's the good? Because I think a lot of times with these conversations, it's really easy to just focus on the negative parts of social media, why they're bad, why it's all bad and all no good for anyone. I think as a self-proclaimed extroverted introvert, I know that like online interactions are much easier for me. Like it's safer. It feels like it's less like tension. I can have a conversation with someone in my own time, like, because there's just certain times I don't want to be social, right? You know, and so it's like I can say, hey, I'm gonna take the effort to talk to this person right now or later, and it doesn't matter. I think it gives introverts a voice a lot of times where they don't, because they're just so drowned out in a conversation. Like if it was just four of us at a dinner party talking, like the introvert's going to probably just get drowned out because they're scared to talk. But I do think it gives people that voice. I'm not saying that's always a good thing, because sometimes maybe they're the loudest ones out there with some very toxic opinions. But that's one example. Anybody else have any examples of positive social media?
Yeah, I would
usage?
say moving from my home in Arkansas here, social media has become way more valuable to me than I expected in keeping up with people, because I built my life in Arkansas and all those people are still there, and I get to see what they're doing, see what they're up to. There's a lot of times where people will post prayer requests on their social media pages, and I can do that, pray for them. And so that's become a huge value for me, to keep up with people who I have deep relationships with, but I'm not around them every day, and I don't get to see them as often. And then I think another thing was this week I actually got added to a Facebook group for Omaha kids ministry people, and so people who are working kids ministry in Omaha, and that was super cool for me, because I was like, wow, this is awesome. Like a lot of times you don't have time to get together with everyone, and your schedules aren't going to work out where you can all get together and talk about things. But now there's a Facebook page that we all get to, post prayer requests on or talk about things that's going on in our ministries. And so I thought that was a really awesome way to use social media. So
Any others?
I'm on probably Twitter the most. And the thing I love about Twitter is that I can follow people who specialize in different things, or they have jobs in different careers that I don't even have access to, and I can learn from them. So they'll post things, they'll post articles. So I think just the wealth of knowledge that we have that we can access from all over the world. You can follow a person and learn about their life, and it's maybe you live in a small town and you're learning about how people live in New York City. Like, I just think that's a really cool.
It gives you an opportunity to gain perspective for sure. Like, I try to follow a diverse group of people all the time, like people who I disagree with, people who I agree with, and try to see their viewpoints, because I think that's super helpful in building a worldview and also like building empathy towards other people's perspectives. But one of the things in Twitter specifically that I liked is, since they've added the feature to where you see what other tweets people have liked, you start to just see all these things that you would never see. And so, yeah, it's great.
Yeah, like I said earlier, especially in ministry world, it's been fun to actually get another lens of what's going on in someone's life and be able to start conversations with some insight in what's actually happening, and take conversations from that automatic passerby language of, hey, what's up? Good. No depth in that to actually talking about what's happening inside their lives. Our church has utilized this as a tool, as we've created not just a Facebook page, which everyone can see, but a Facebook group. And it's been amazing to see how people have interacted with one another inside of that, where there feels like it's a safe place because it's private, and people are praying for one another. They're sharing stories with one another. They're getting rides. They're doing a lot of different things inside of there, that because we've just opened up, like we're not the heroes of this group. We just opened it up. We thought it would maybe be a good idea to help bridge some of those connections, especially in a large church. And so it's been a joy, to see that and to feel like people don't have to ask the pastors, the clergy, the paid staff to be praying for all the things. They can see, man, I'm praying, I'm getting prayed for, I'm being cared for in this family that I belong to. That's bigger than it is. And so that's been a huge blessing for me to get to sit back and watch and help facilitate a little bit this year. So I think there's a lot of great potential for ministry and connection, like you were saying, Rachel, on that group you got added to, and feeling like you're part of that community, not just like an outsider, but you can build a lot of relational connections that way as well.
So a couple months ago, we had a couple sex therapists on, and one of the points they brought up when it was about addiction, or sex addiction specifically, is how the brain kind of starts to create new neural pathways when we do something repeatedly that is gratifying, something that releases dopamine. And I think that leads us kind of into this next point here of addiction and what that looks like. And I think we've all been there. We've all experienced that dopamine hit of, oh, okay, I posted something, and then you just kind of wait and you keep refreshing and find, is someone going to comment? Am I going to get a like? Am I, and that's, I think that's kind of where the addiction can form, how it can start. What are some viewpoints on that?
I think for me, I can kind of see that how my brain has been affected by social media, by like my apps on my phone. So like literally I can open up my phone in a second and know exactly where I'm going to click to get to a social media app. And it's just like instinct. Like, it's just like I could do it in my sleep just to open it real quick and click on Instagram. Like, it's right there. And so I can see how my brain is just like getting that continuous, like, doing it over and over and over again, to where it's just ingrained in like my brain. And so sometimes I just find myself, standing in a line or going somewhere and I'm having to wait for something, and it's just like the immediate, like, well, it's quiet, I don't have anyone to talk to. I immediately open this up and, self-medicate, I don't want to think, I don't want to be by myself, I don't want to be in quiet, so I need to get to my social media. So
yeah, and it's like you don't even think about it. It's not like you're thinking, I'm going to get on Instagram now. Like, you literally just pull out your phone. Like, sometimes I'll like wake up, turn off my alarm, and the next thing I know, I'm on social media. I'm like, what happened? Like,
to me, it's
just
like,
waking up.
It's like the new, I walked into the kitchen and I forgot why. Like, that's me. Like, I'm somehow in the Instagram app and I don't even know why.
Right.
Like, I just opened it. Like, what am I doing
And
here?
I checked it 2 minutes ago, and I've already gone through all the pictures, and it's like, you're caught up. And I'm like, I don't.
Especially now with how they've tailored the ads and stuff to be so like specifically designed for you, to where when you're scrolling through it, I mean, so you talk about like the dopamine, I don't know if this relates, but when you're scrolling through something and then you just keep scrolling and the next thing you know, it's been like 30 minutes or an hour and you're like, what am I doing? Like, why am I still scrolling? Like, it never ends, right? Their feed never ends. And so, it's like, I don't know, does it ever end? Like, at what point it's almost like you have to make a conscious decision to say, like, I'm stopping this now.
Right.
So, one of the interesting things I heard was that, well, I mean, have you ever experienced the phantom vibration?
Yes.
Like you feel like, oh, my phone's, and it's not even in your pocket or whatever.
Yeah.
They've actually diagnosed that as phantom vibration syndrome. And like 90% of adults have said who have a cell phone have experienced that. And I think that's just like another sign that we've just attuned. It's like the phone has become an extension of our body. Like if we don't have it on us, like if I left my house with it, I would turn around. Like, I mean, I don't know. I don't know. I haven't played that game, I guess, but I don't know how far I'd have to get away from home before I wouldn't turn around to go get my phone. But I think these are all signs that, hey, we have a dependency on this technology.
Yeah, when you have a panic, like literally I've been in moments of panic of like not knowing, where my phone is at the moment, or how am I going to get this meeting done without my phone, or how am I going to get know what's going on in the world without it. And then you start to, I think with any addiction, you start to make excuses for why you need that fix, And so for me, it's easy, and it's been easy at times to say, I'm going to get off social media, but I need social media to do my job well.
Right.
And so that's why I can't get off of social media.
Try getting rid of the social media manager's phone.
Yeah. It's a mess.
Yeah, I can't do it.
And then setting, boundaries for when I can and shouldn't be on social media. It's like, well, you just never know when someone might send that message to the church that I have to respond to. And so if I get off, and it creates this dependence on it, it creates me making excuses for why I can't eliminate that thing that I love, that I crave, for that next thing that's going to come in, whether it's good or it's bad. I've been logged out of Facebook the last few weeks, and it is nice that you can actually like log out of your personal account and still be on the Page app, which is kind of a cool feature, and do that work side of things. But it's amazing, like you were saying, Rachel, how many times I just picked that up and I touch that and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm not logged in, but it reveals that I'm searching for something. I'm longing for something that's not being satisfied in that moment, which is, where all addictions, it's trying to fill a void inside of our lives and get that dopamine dump. That is a God-given thing, and He's given us that feeling and those longings, those cravings for a reason. But it helps me realize, man, a lot of times I feed that with the wrong solution. That's only temporary and not going to actually satisfy.
So in a lot of ways, it's no different than gambling addictions. The one thing I always found interesting is how, like, if you go into a casino, they always tune all the bells and whistles and the music, everything into the key of C, so it doesn't combat with each other. But it's also because the key of C is like a very pleasant key to our brains, and so just little things where it's tailored to do that. And if you start to dig into these companies like Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, they hire people to mold and develop just the perfect looking icon, that alert icon. It just needs to look so good and appetizing to you, and like every little part of it is developed, and it's psychology that they're using against you to try to make you just stay in there longer and longer and longer, and just keep feeding that habit. And it's kind of scary when you think about it that way. Like, hey, there's kind of these people like plotting against me because they want me to stay in here so they can feed me ads.
They want to create addicts.
Yeah.
That's ultimately what they want to create, is people that love these experiences, and our hearts are tuned into these experiences that we feel with their product. And so that's what they want us to continue to have. Like the social media platforms, the companies that are doing this, or at least at the forefront, Google's and Facebook's and Apple, like most of their advertisements aren't geared towards selling you a product that's going to make you smarter.
Yeah.
These products don't make us smarter. They might make us more aware, but they make us feel something, and that feeling is what creates addiction, you know, to something, how I'm feeling in that moment. And so they're geniuses. That's what they're trying to do.
Yeah. And they're not, I mean, you can't blame them. I mean, they are doing their job.
Yep.
It's up to us. Like, it's our responsibility to take action and to make our own decisions and choices. I mean, it's not like they're forcing our hands or anything. They're just creating something, and we are participating in it. So
I think that longing that you were talking about, Alex, is key, because if you can identify what that longing is, then you can identify, okay, what am I doing to fill that? Because quite honestly, it might not be social media. It might be online shopping, or it might be a game on your phone. I think we're so addicted to having something there. And so whether it's not online, or whether it's social media or online shopping or a game that you play when you're bored or you're in line, I mean, all those things are filling that same longing of whatever that is for you. So,
and I think one of those gauges that I've tried to have in my life that I heard from probably like Jefferson Bethke or something like that was, if you can't give it up, you don't own it, it owns you, you know? And so a lot of things in my life, I'm like, I could give that up. You know, I own it. I'm the one that's in control, but really that control flips pretty easily inside of our lives that we don't know. And ultimately, I think there's some goods from research that's done by this that points towards our bigger longings, which I think the church should be leading in some of this way. There's digital ethnographers. So these are people that are studying this digital landscape and how it affects us, social media. And a gal named Dana Boyd says, increasingly empirical data suggests that teenage use of technology points beyond just an adolescent hunger for gadgets and towards a hunger for relationships of presence. So if you take away the connectivity of their devices, you turn off text messaging, remove their contact list, you don't let them have social capabilities on the games that they're playing, they're far less interested in that technological device, because it's not, they say it's not social media that they're addicted to, it's the people on the other end.
The connection.
It's the connection. It's ultimately community. And before any iOS or Android system came into play, like Scripture talks about the fact that we are people that are created for community, and that's what this provides us. It scratches that itch that we're created for without actually having to maybe do all the work of the negative parts of community when we have fear around that, or we don't want to have to put the time in. It's still, we're created for this, and it scratches that itch enough until we go and need it again, and we need it again. So it points towards this thing that we know, that God created us to be people that are communal beings. And so I wonder often how the church can not just push against it, but how do we leverage that God-given thing, that thing that we're longing for, that we're searching for, and social media is evidence of that. Our addictions to social media are evidence of that, but how do we give that deeper thing that's actually going to satisfy, that longing, that thirst, so we don't thirst any longer, as Jesus talks about. And so I think that's an interesting side of it, of the research that's not even Christian research, that it's pointing towards we were designed and created for community, and it's our attempts to have those longings met.
Well, a lot of times when I hear these things, and it's like, a lot of times it's the negative, and I go, okay, well, it's not going away. Like, we can say it's bad all we want, but I mean, the mobile phone is only going to get more advanced. It's not going to go away. There's a whole generation now of kids who don't know any difference, right? They were born into an era where the cell phone existed. And I try to think, man, when I was a kid, like what's an equivalent to it? Like, what would have been like my equivalent to it? Like, I got a new bike. I'd go to my friend's house and show him my bike. Would he give me a thumbs up? I don't know. That's like a like, I guess. But like, it's just one of those things where it's hard to think, like, what would I do when I was bored? How would I fill my time other than just complaining to my mom that I was bored? Like, what did my parents do to fill that, like, the kind of, like you talked about, Rachel, that haunting, like, emptiness you feel when you have to be alone with your thoughts, like a crossword puzzle, like what you turned on the soap opera. I don't know, like what, maybe you baked. I don't know, but it's one of those things where it's not going away.
Yeah.
Did it ever really replace something? Is this why we feel busier all the time? Because it just filled up our time with something more on top of what we were already doing? I don't. It's just an interesting.
I think one of the
dynamic.
important parts that's super uncomfortable about this when I have these conversations with people, as you were alluding to, that there's what people would call digital natives, and then there's digital immigrants. And the thing is that digital natives are the kids, like that's all they've ever known. That's all their lives is known. And the digital immigrants are the parents. And so it's this weird thing where immigrants are trying to raise natives, and then we draw these comparisons of like, well, when I was a kid, I used to be outside, and that's what I did, and I rode around, and I had friends in the neighborhood, but you
also walk 10 miles to school in the snow.
Well, not even that, but like our culture's changed a lot. You moved into the suburbs where like my kids, like I had friends just all around, like every house. If I look at my neighborhood, there's just not even kids all around, in my neighborhood. And so how my kids interact with friends, where their friends, we can't compare, and I think that's where a lot of parents want to say, well, I didn't do that when I was a kid, and so you should subscribe to how I do this. Anytime immigrants and natives, and whether it's culturally or anything, get in arguments over who is right, they're two different cultures, and so you have to come with a humility to know that you just cannot have the experiences that they have, and they can't have the experience. How do we learn from one another? And I think that's where people get mad and angry and uncomfortable, and we throw around, my kid's addicted to technology, when maybe they're actually not addicted to technology. Just looks different than what you were. And so I think that's where it gets uncomfortable some ways.
And I think two kids can find their community in ways that maybe their parents don't understand. They're trying to force like these very structured things on them, like whether it's sports or whatever, to try to force this community on them, where sometimes, like when we were kids, like you said, you could go outside and you'd go play with your friends, where now that's less and less likely. I think about my neighborhood, it's all like retirees who live around me, and it's like there's no kids for them to go out and play with. But the fact that they can get on a video game and chat with their friend from school while they're doing it and make these connections, it's no different than them going outside and playing, other than you're going to argue the exercise thing, which I get that. But it's just, there is still that same connection that's happening there, and you kind of like, you either have to try to roll. I mean, you could say, no, don't ever do this, it's all bad, or you try to find the good parts of it and encourage that.
This is a hard one. I always struggle with the how do we as Christians in culture that's changing and shifting and constantly, do we just give in to culture, or do we go against culture and go against the grain and do something different? I think it's just such a hard, because the Bible doesn't talk about technology. It doesn't talk about your iPads. Like, you should only be on your iPads 5 minutes a day, and that's a verse that we memorize. Like, that's not in the Bible. So it's like so hard to kind of figure out. There's always just that tension between going with culture and going against culture, and where do Christians stand in that? And I always struggle with that, because I always want to immediately, I want to go against culture, because I just assume in my head for some reason that what culture is doing, what the world is doing, is bad. It's always shifting towards the negative side. And so I personally just have a hard time with figuring out, what do I do as a Christian? Because I feel like I should just always be going against culture. And how do I keep myself open to what's happening without letting my Christian values and my faith get minimized, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I think I've had that conversation a ton of times and wrestled with it myself. And a part of why we call this uncomfortable isn't because we're going to be spewing venom and arguing, but these are things we really have to wrestle with in discipleship. As we look at culture and we look at Christianity, we have to figure out that gap, how we're going to respond. But I think one of the things that Scripture does talk about, we're like, it doesn't talk about the iPad or technology exclusively, but when we study history and we study Jesus and how he leveraged technology throughout Scripture, like, God knew what he was doing when Jesus came, like right in the middle of the Roman Empire and the Roman road system, and his ability to travel and take the gospel throughout the world in that region. It couldn't have been done even 100 years prior. And so we don't look at roads as technology, or Paul, and as he wrote letters, and as they had people taking letters around, and And we're even able to write letters on papyrus and have things that were ink to be able to do that. Like before that, a lot of stuff was just handed down orally. And so now you're able to capture these things that were groundbreaking technology at the time that moved the gospel forward. And so they were not, and of course the Roman road system opened up human trafficking. It opened up a lot of evil to be able to come into the world and for Satan to get a foothold in these things. But I think over and over, we don't think of them as technological advances, but even the printing press was created because people wanted the Bible to be able to be printed and available to way more people. And that was groundbreaking technology at the time. And so if we study that, the church has, and God and the Holy Spirit, I think, has always figured out ways of, hey, here's our current technology, here's the ways we've moved, and how are we going to redeem those things? How are we going to take what's happening in culture that are not evils, but how do we redeem them? And also say, yes, there's evil that happens here. This does open up pornography. The porn industry has grown so much because of the advent of the internet, but so has the ability for the gospel to spread across the globe. And so I think that's where it gets uncomfortable, is how much am I going to lean in? How much am I going to lean away? How much do I just dismiss it? And all those kind of things, at least for me.
And I think you make a good point too. We do have the Holy Spirit. Like, we have that ability to ask God to give us direction in these things, even if it's not set like clearly in the scriptures, but we can pray and ask God to give us clarity on what we should do, what our family should do. And ultimately, if we're seeking the kingdom of God first, everything else is going to kind of fall into place. But I think sometimes technology will easily overshadow the things that we want to do to seek God first.
Yeah.
I think everybody needs balance in their life. Everybody. Like, it doesn't matter which side of the issue you fall on. But I also think that with an issue or with a topic like this, we're all going to fall on different sides. And we're not always going to agree. And I think that's okay.
Yeah.
I think yourself, what tendencies you have, if something has become unhealthy in your life, and then that's up to you to make that decision to make a change. And so quite honestly, like, this conversation has made me think, like, I need to get off social media again because it was so good for me when I didn't have it in my life. And quite honestly, I think that the big announcements that we miss are few and far between. And when you're really, like, if you were to look at social media every day and look at what am I actually looking at, you're really not missing that much when you're not on it. So,
yeah, I think if you want to do something super uncomfortable, ask the Holy Spirit to reveal ways that you should, ask him to convict you on things that you shouldn't do or you should do when it comes to this. Like, actually sit down and pray. Don't just think about how's this affecting my life and make your pros and cons list. That's cool. But I think to actually invite God into this area of your life, any area of your life, that's where things get really uncomfortable, because all of a sudden you realize my job is not just to lead my own life, but to submit to a God who's good and wants to speak to me. And that's where things get uncomfortable, because he might tell you to do something opposite of what you've been doing. And I think a lot of times we don't even invite him into these areas of our life. And so that's messy.
Well, and that might be someone listening to this right now who thinks, hey, this is an uncomfortable topic for me. I don't feel any tension in this. I don't. And like, that's probably a sign that you've kind of made up your mind, right? Like you've already made up your mind whether it's good or bad, and you're not gonna move on that. And I think I challenge anybody to just go, okay, like, try to look at those reasons why, and try to weigh that out. Whatever that might be. I think it's a lot of times these issues go so much deeper. There's because it's social media and the internet is a tool that we use. It is not something that controls us, and at least it shouldn't be, right? And so I think that you have to kind of do a self-analysis and then go, all right, what's the deep-rooted cause of these feelings I'm having? Why am I so jealous of everyone I see on social media? Is it something in me? Like, why can I not be happy for anybody else's success? Is it something in me? Am I depressed? Am I lonely? Why am I so bitter about this stuff? Why do these things that shouldn't make me upset when I see them just trigger something inside of me? And I think that's one of those things that that's the part where it gets really uncomfortable, because you're just like, oh, wait, what's going on here? Like, why is all these emotions surfacing that I've never experienced before? So sometimes that can be really hard, but I do think the other sign of that is, like, if you're just scrolling for hours ad nauseum with no point to it. Like there's something you're trying to block out. There's something that you're trying to numb. And I think like through, like you mentioned, the detox series, I think a lot of people have even said that, like, oh, I'm realizing now that I've just been trying to numb these other feelings, and not having it there has brought that to my attention. So.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. And I think the other part is like, if you're a parent too, you have to start thinking about this stuff. I think a lot of times parents, they're ignorant to it because they just didn't grow up with it. And so we're just like, oh, we'll see where life takes us as we raise our kids. But anytime in parenting, I think we have to be proactive and not reactive. Mm-hmm. And too much of parenting, and even in my life sometimes, is reactive parenting. And so I'll cross that bridge when I get there. But technology and apps and giving your kid a phone is like giving them a digital tattoo gun. You know, you have no clue what your kids are literally able to tattoo what their futures look like. And people are able to, like, at jobs or schools they might get into, just being silly, post things on social media, and it could have literally ruined their life. Like we've seen that happen with a Husker running back. We've seen that happen more and more in our society. And so we have to have an awareness of the dangers of this, and that there's a real enemy on the hunt for people's hearts. And this is one of the tools he's going to use to try to get kids' hearts, to try to get adults' hearts. And so we have to be aware of that and not just ignorant to it as well.
Right. All right. Well, we got a lot to think about.
Yeah.
I gotta see if I need to quit my job.
Social media,
I gotta stay away from social media forever. No, it is. I think it is difficult, and I think balance and moderation is always a good rule. Thanks everybody for having this conversation. I know it can be tough, but I think that does it for this episode. I did want to mention we did have a survey out there, and we were giving away an Amazon gift card. Where if you're listening to this now and you haven't heard from us, that means you lost.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
We should have contacted you by now. But seriously, if you did give feedback, thank you.
Yeah, we appreciate it. It did help.
It was super helpful, and we're going to dive into it more. And we literally took one of those pieces of feedback today and talked about it, and we'll do that more in the future. So thanks.
Yeah. If you want to reach out to us, you can email us at podcast@cccomaha.org, or you can reach out to us on social media @cccomaha. Thanks again for listening, and we'll catch you next time.